It is imperative that you conduct your financial appraisal for the site diligently. So, what are the different purposes that we do the financial feasibility for? The number one is to actually determine the value of the land. Second is to actually determine the profitability or the project viability. Does the project stack up? Does it make financial sense to do this project? Does it have any good returns? And different things are required for different purposes, and we'll get into that in a second. Profitability of the project. So these are the two main ones. So we've determined the profitability of the project. We've determined the value of the land, and how is it used by the lenders in that sense. For example, the lenders will look at, is the project viable from their perspective? Are the assumptions made by you, that is the developer, have any legs, or is it backed by research? So every lender, whatever you bring to them, is not going to just take it on face value. It's going to conduct their own background search on the project to understand whether or not it actually has any legs, or whether or not all the assumptions that you have made are true. So they will go and verify all the costs. They will see all the assumptions that you made about the sales or the sale value of the project, whether or not it's achievable. They have to are the assumed costs realistic? Is the project timeline achievable? This is one of the most important things in any kind of property development project. And if you don't pay attention to this timeline, you will see that all your profits are going to start evaporating if your project gets delayed. Is the marketing plan? Can the developer sell, lease the stock that is going to be developed? So they're going to check out what is your marketing plan about the development. All these questions will be verified by the lender in light of the current market conditions. So once satisfied, the lenders will then look into what your profit margin is, what is the development margin on the cost, what is the entrepreneurial risk margin that they actually put on it. And don't worry about what these things are. I'll explain each one of them in detail. There is actually no fixed rule of thumb when it comes to lenders. From their perspective, different lenders will look at different profit and risk margins and adjust their exposure depending upon various factors. For example, the project timeline, the developer's credentials, and your experience, the developer's financial background, feasibility assumptions, what you put in your feasibility, project related site value or the residual value of the land, and the type of development and market conditions. If you're trying to develop a high-rise building into an oversupplied market, the lender might think that, we don't want to fund this development because we don't want to expose ourselves to market conditions. So there is no fixed rule of thumb from lender's perspective, and they will compensate themselves, that is, mitigate their risk using any or all of the measures below. For example, they might have a higher interest rate. They might have finance setup costs that could be higher than what you normally pay. They could have lock-in periods where if you tried to pay off the loan before a certain period of time, they might have penalty interest or penalty closing costs on that loan. They could have pre-sale or pre-letting conditions. So you might have to achieve a certain number of pre-sales that covers the debt, and in turn actually covers the risk that the lender is taking in order to fund your development. Personal guarantees and other collaterals that they might ask you to put up for the development. So we've covered determining the value of the land. We've covered the profitability and project viability. We understand why and how the lenders actually use a financial feasibility. So what does it tell the developers? So it's also used by the developers, of course. That's why we are doing this course, to figure out what could be the different variations to the highest best possible use. For example, we might have 1,000 square meter of block, and we might be able to put 4 townhouses on it. But if you alter your scheme, you might be able to figure out that, oh, instead of 4, I could maybe put 6 on them. Or if I designed it a certain way, I could do 8 apartments instead of 4 townhouses. But the developers have to run different scenarios to see what the cost of each scenario is going to be, and which one is going to be the most viable for them in terms of cost and the benefit that it's going to provide them by following a certain scheme. So they could run different scenarios like 3 bedroom versus 2 bedroom versus a mix of both, or in what proportion apartments or townhouses. Or you could have a layer of retail at the bottom, or a layer of commercial offices at the top, and then you're going to have some residential apartments. What would that do? Would that put pressure on the amount of parking lots that you would need, because you're going to have a layer of commercial over there? What are the commercial parking requirements? At some places is about 4 parking lots for every 100 square meters of commercial. So it just depends. So these are the different scenarios that a developer would run on their end to figure out what which feasibility comes out to be the most viable, and the ones that they can actually conduct. So they also use it to do a sensitivity analysis. Now, the two financial feasibilities that I offer in my courses all have sensitivity analysis built into them. So longer timeline, longer payback period, higher holding costs, market conditions, price drops, cost blowouts, contingencies. So there are different ways of actually doing this, and you can get into as much detail as you like in order to do the sensitivity analysis on them, because a developer needs to see the different kinds, what is the bottom line going to be in different scenarios, and through different by running different sensitivity analysis. So when they actually get into a development, they are mentally prepared to say, look, if we take this line of action, that's what we can expect, and that's how long it's going to take, and these are the costs that we have to determine if we go this way. And if we go another way, or we follow a different scheme, or we do something else with it, these are the costs and benefits that we're going to get in X amount of time. So all these have to be weighed against each other to get the best possible scenario that the developer can develop.